World Cup qualifier match, game number 2, Uruguay against the US. It's only a 3-point game after game 1, 1916 in Glendale last week. The return fixture is still all to play for that America's 1 spot. Like I said, 1916, man, was pretty close last week. The US went up to a pretty decent lead, and Uruguay kind of came back. We'll go through some of the stats from last week, the squads, and one of the predictions, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. It should be on Flow Rugby in the States. I'll put a link in the description for Flow, seeing as they are an affiliate, of course, if you guys want to sign up. That's only for guys in the States, though. For the rest of the world, I think it's on YouTube. Geo-blocked, of course, for anywhere that's streaming it, like the US. But also, I think it's on Star Plus in Uruguay, but correct us if I'm mistaken with that one. For the squads, Uruguay have named a pretty stable lineup. The big bit of bad news for them is Berchesi is not going to be in the squad for this one. I did read that he's had to return to France for some kind of, I think, personal stuff, urgent stuff to go on. So the fullback from last week, Felipe Echeverri, has to move into number 10. I'm not sure how much 10 he has played, but obviously it's a bit of bad news for them to lose Berchesi. But it's the same front row, Sanguinetti, Gattas, and Arbello. Same second row with Dotti and Leindecker, and same back row with Ardao, Civetta, and Diana. So at least the forward pack is the same. That is legitimately good news, man, because you don't really want to be chopping and changing too much if you don't have to. Arata is still there, which is also very good news because he's one of their kind of frontline guys. Villaseca and Freitas are the midfield. Now, Villaseca, when we're looking at the stats, he's one of the few guys for Uruguay who had kind of not the best tackling numbers, like 3 from 7 is kind of bad news. Maybe that's an area that the US will look to target. And when I look at their lineup, I'm wondering if they are indeed going to be targeting that area. But Freitas was pretty solid with 4 from 5. Mieres, Favaro, and Silva are the back 3. So Favaro jumps up from the bench. Silva moves from right wing to fullback, and Mieres is still there on the left wing. So yeah, there are some changes, but largely a pretty stable side. Now for the US, it's kind of a similar story in that they still don't have AJ McGinty. There was talk that he might be available for this return leg. He was never going to be available for the first one, but nope. He has still not been named, so McGee, I always call him Maggie. Will McGee is still there at number 10. Now, I don't know how many points AJ McGinty is worth, but it's definitely preferable to have him in the side. Nothing against McGee, but AJ McGinty is just a very, very good player. So if you can have him in the lineup, obviously you'd like to. Similar story though, same front row, Anu Pifaletti and Taufete'e. They didn't really maybe get on top like they would have liked to have, given that they got some pretty big guns in that front row. The scrum numbers were kind of pretty competitive, so yeah, it's maybe an area the US guys would like to push on, but the Uruguay guys certainly put their hands up. Breckley and Civetta, same second row. They did lose a couple of lineouts, whereas I think the Uruguay lineout was at 100%, so it's an area for maybe improvement. Unfortunately, also Hanko Hermajes, who is one of their main guys that kind of getting carry forward, go forward ball. He's had to withdraw from the squad for some personal family stuff. So Guerra moves from 7 to 6. Fatanana Schultz is back in the squad, which is a bit of good news. He's there at 7 and Cam Dolan is still there at 8. Guerra last week was like 15 tackles. Easily the number 1 guy of the game. 15 out of 16, so a proper shift from him, although he did concede 3 penalties, which was kind of first equal. And discipline was one area the US kind of struggled a little bit last week. DeHaas and McGee, like I mentioned, are 9 and 10. Lopetti and Bryce Campbell swap jerseys, so that's lining up Lopetti with Villaseca, which again, based on his defensive shift last week, may be an area that they're looking to kind of run at Villaseca. I'm not sure. That'll be kind of a curious one to see, although Bryce Campbell's a bit of a unit in himself. So, yeah. Crusade Dyer and Braki are the back 3. Interestingly, last week it was both the fullbacks who had the most of the run meters. It was kind of the way the game was being played. There wasn't a heck of a lot of kind of line breaks and big open opportunities, so it was the fullback tracking it up from the back that was cranking up the meters. Echeverri had like 32 last week from fullback, and Braki had 46. which in itself is not kind of huge numbers either way. So, yeah, the nature of the game was pretty tight. Pretty similar bench, although Bonasso will get his debut if he comes on, because remember they've had to bring in replacements. So yeah, otherwise the bench I think is pretty stable. The last five, with USA's win last week, it still remains at 2 to Uruguay, 3 to the US. The average score over the last five is 32-24. But one of those games is the 2018 game over in Uruguay, where the USA won 61-19. Apart from that game, the games have been relatively tight. 1916 last week, 32-25 to Uruguay over in the US. In 2019, that's a relatively close result. 29-23 in 2017, 29-25 in 2016. So the games tend to be pretty close. So a 3-point buffer, I mean, given last week's game, the lead the US had, seems like not enough. It seems like they would have liked to have gotten more. But given the nature of the games, I mean, 3 points is still definitely advantage USA in that terms. But we are in Uruguay for this return fixture, so how much is home advantage worth? Is it 3 points? Is it 6? I don't know. The goal kicking last week, the US were 2 from 4, whereas Uruguay were at 4 from 4. But remember, it was Burchesi taking the goal kicks, and he's not in the squad. Discipline, like I mentioned, the US conceded 13 penalties to Uruguay's 9. So it's a relatively low penalty count, but you don't really want to be conceding 4 more than your opponents, because if you look at the fact of how many penalties Uruguay kicked, that's kind of the punishing fact. Uruguay had more run meters last week, but the US got a similar amount. It wasn't a heck of a lot of difference, but the US had a lot fewer carries. So Uruguay had a lot more ball, but maybe not as kind of dynamic in their carries. So if the US can kind of free up, I mean, the run meters per carry, the US were at 4+, which is the magic number, right? 4 or more is good, whereas Uruguay were at 2.4. But if they're kind of able to hog the pill and get some penalties and kick them over, that's still another way to win the game. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one. Like I said, it's all to play for. The winner of this one goes through and qualifies for the Rugby World Cup. The loser is not dead and buried, though, because they will have a chance to face off against the winner of Chile and Canada. That one's only a 1-point ball game. We still got to see the return leg in that one as well. Canada going in with a narrow 1-point lead, but Chile at home. Kind of a similar situation to this one, to be fair. So, yeah. The Rugby Forecast algorithm says USA by 5 points. 5 points. In the scheme of things, that's a pretty confident prediction, because, like I said, the matches have tended to be pretty close. But anyway, like I said, Flow Rugby in the States, YouTube for you guys, not kind of restricted by the geo-blocking controls. Otherwise, a VPN can work just as well. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts. How do you reckon this one's going to go? And I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.